Okay, instructions for the thermal detection lab. Just some logistics things. We have, so there's instructions here on the web, but I've also put a copy in each location where you can test, so you don't have to print out your own. There's one in there. But if you want to refer to it when you're writing a lab report or whatever, it's right here. I have 2 different rooms that you can do this in. There we go. They're identical, you just sign up for one of them, okay? You'll need about an hour for each subject. You're going to be in pairs. And once you collect data for one, you can come back and do the other, or you can sign up for 2 hours and do it back to back. But that's I would plan for that long. It may not quite take that long, but I would plan for that long. So the one location is in the mains room, which is where you did the dark adaptation. The other one is in the cognitive suite, which if you go into the psychology department, that back hallway, it's the second door on the right back there. It's 229D. There is a data collection Excel sheet saved on the desktop with those computers in there, but you can also download it here if something happens and it goes away. You can go and get the data collection sheet here. When you open the data collection sheet, you'll want to save it as your own. So don't put your data into the template and then save it on the desktop. So open it, save it as your name, right? So that you can have that data to analyze later. Good? Okay. So, as I kind of mentioned this morning, we're going to measure the thermal sensitivity, your threshold for detecting heat, on your palm of your hand, the left palm of your hand, your forehead, and the back of your right hand. Okay? Everybody got a bandana, that's your personal bandana. Make a blindfold out of that, so fold it in a triangle, roll it up so it's like a roll, and then put it around your eyes and tie it back of your head. It's important that it's not thick like this, right? Because if you cover your forehead, then that's going to reduce your sensitivity. So make sure it's just around your eyes, okay? The thermal lights that we use to do this, if you just close your eyes and don't use that bandana, you can kind of see the lights through your eyelids. And so it's important that you can't detect if the light's on or not, right? In addition to, so one hypothesis you could have is on your thermal sensitivity, and we talked about that today in terms of glabrous and hairy skin and in terms of density of receptors for the face versus other parts of our body, right? The other part of this is going way back to the very first day, the very first lecture. We talked about 3 common psychophysical techniques for detecting threshold. We talked about the method of adjustment, where the stimulus is under the subject's control. We talked about the method of limits, where you start at a sub-threshold level and go up until you hear a yes. Then you go above that and go to a super threshold level and come down until you get a no. You sort of go to the stairwise back and forth. And then we talk about method of constant stimuli, which is where you just have random presentation of trials, randomly ordered trials. So we're going to do all 3 of those for this lab, for the 3 different areas. Good? All right, so this is what the setup looks like in the mains room. You have a computer for the experimenter to record your data. You have the 3 lamps over here. There's a plexiglass barrier between them. You don't wear your mask when you're in there, but you're socially distanced. In the cognitive testing room, you have the computer. On the other side of the wooden barrier is your setup for the subject. Okay? Zooming in a little bit on this equipment, where the subject sits, we have, if you're in the chair and you sit with the table right up to your chest, then with that center line centered on your chest, then that will make your forehead 12 inches from the forehead lamp. So all the lamps are positioned to be 12 inches away from your hands or your face. That's important because if you're sitting back like this, right, and it's 20 inches, then that's going to change your sensitivity, right? The amount of distance that heat has to travel will be less, right? Less heat. If these get moved or something, we put little outlines of where the tripod feet are supposed to go, so if they get knocked or something, you can position them back to where they're supposed to be. So left palm, back of right hand, and then you're sitting there with your chest against the table, and you should be at 12 inches. Experimenter. We have my super fancy homemade light controller. So there are light switches for the left hand, the forehead, and the right hand. When you turn them on, these thermal lights, they like come on like that, right? It takes a second. So if you just flip it on and off, you're not getting a stimulus. So you need to turn it on, count to 4 or 5, and say stimulus. Do you detect anything? Subject says yes or no, then you can turn it off. Okay? This knob here is a thermostat, and this is going to allow you to set the intensity of the heat. Okay? Questions so far? Good. Okay. So for the method of adjustment, this controller, you can slide it under the plexiglass so that the subject can manipulate it. So when you're doing your left palm, you're going to have to turn it to where you can just barely detect it, right, with your blindfold on. And when you do your forehead, you do the same thing. And then when you do your back of your right hand, you're going to have to reach over and use your left hand to turn it. The one thing you can't do as a subject is control the lights being on or off. So what is adaptation? The process of adaptation. What does that mean?
Like when the stimuli is constant and then at some point you won't feel it.
Right, it becomes less. So if you just flip on the switch and the person's doing this, there could be adaptation there. So the subject could say, hey, turn on or turn off. You're going to want that contrast between it being on or being off to try and not get it on for a long period of time where you have habituation. Good? Any questions about method of adjustment? Okay. So you do that for those 3, and that's going to go into your Excel sheet. So I'm going to pull up the Excel sheet, right? So you're just going to simply, the subject's going to say, okay, that's where I could barely detect it from my forehead. You're going to look over at the dial and see where the thing is, and you say, oh, that's at 27. So you're just going to put those numbers in there, right, of whatever it ended up at. Then you're going to take the control back and you're going to do the method of limits, all right? So the method of limits, we're going to do that for the forehead, for the left palm, and for the back of the right hand. So you're going to come in at sub-threshold, and you're going to put the stimulus the dial at 5. You're going to turn it on, say stimulus, turn it off. Did you detect it? And I don't think anyone can detect it at 5, right? So you're going to keep going, now 10, now 15, so you're going up in increments of 5, okay? At some point they're going to say yes. When they've said yes twice in a row like that, that's a good confirmation that they can detect it, right? Then you're going to start here above that. Whoops. So if they said yes at 35, I don't have to go all the way to 70. Maybe I go to 55. Yes, 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 no, no. Okay? When I get 2 no's going back down, okay, I'm good. So now that was detected at 30 was our last detection. So now I'm going to start here somewhere below 30. I don't have to go all the way to 5. Maybe I just go to 15 and come up. You just want to make sure you're under that threshold. If I go to 15 and I'm coming up and I get a pattern like that, you could get a false alarm, right? That's why you want to have 2 yeses in a row, right? So we wouldn't count that. We would count that as a no, and it would be here, okay? So we're going to do that back and forth 4 times, 2 up and 2 down. All right, so then how do I get my threshold? The threshold is going to be the average of those breakpoints, right? So where did I first say yes to each of those, right? And so if I average that for my forehead, it would be 35 plus 30 plus 35 plus 40 divided by 4. So that's going to give me a threshold of 35. Did y'all get that? Do that for the left palm, do that for the right. All right. Now, the thing that's most time consuming is the method of constant stimuli. So here, you're going to be told, okay, first stimulus is the right hand 45. Set the dial to 45, turn it on, ask for a stimulus, turn it off, record their response. The next one is forehead 0. That means we're going to turn it all the way to 0, do the forehead switch. That should be a no because there's 0, right? And you just follow this and just follow that pattern, okay? Once you're done with that, this is now, that's all you have to do. So once you get done with filling in all that stuff, you can save your Excel file, email it to yourself, and you can go do the data analysis on any computer that has Excel, okay? Or if you want to do it in the lab, that's fine, I don't care. If you have time to do that, however you want to do it. But if you're running short on time, get your data collected and then do the data analysis afterwards. The second sheet is your data analysis sheet that explains what I'm going to tell you, but it's all written out right here step by step. You're going to copy, you're going to select all 3 of those columns and copy them. Come over to this data analysis sheet, and you're going to paste that right there. Then you're going to say data and sort, and you're going to sort by stimulus. If that's not checked, if it says like column B, then you just check this box that says my data has headers. Stimulus. And that's going to put them all in order for you. So as I mentioned, with forehead 0, you shouldn't detect that because it's a 0, right? There are 10 of those trials for each body part. That's where we're going to calculate our false alarm rate, okay? So out of the 10, how many times did this person say they could detect it? Can y'all see that? 2, right? There were 2 yeses, all the rest were no's. So we're going to come in here and say our false alarm rate was 20%, our correct rejection was 80%. If there's no yeses, then it would be 0% and 100%. Do you get that? Good. Okay. For all the other stimuli, there are only 4 trials for each of the real stimuli, okay? That means that you have 4 different possibilities of what your output can be. If it's all no, 4 no's, that's 0%. Right? So you come in here and do 0. For 10, how many yeses did I have? 1, right? So that's 25%. 1 out of 4. What about for 15? 50%, right? What about for 20? 100%. All yeses. What about for 25? 75%, because there's 3 yeses. And then all the rest of those are yeses. So that means, what's happening? Went down 200 and over 200. Okay. So all the rest of those are 100%, not 1,000%. 100%. So fill all those in, okay? Then you come down and do the same thing for the left palm and for the right back of the hand, okay? All right. So you're going to fill in this chart. Who remembers how we determine threshold when we're doing method of constant stimuli? I know it's the very first day of class. I know it's probably the least exciting of the year.
Isn't it just like a random, like, intensities?
Yeah, so we're presenting random intensities. How do we know what the threshold is? How do we determine what the threshold is?
Is it 50%?
It's 50%. It's greater than chance. So you're greater than chance at saying, I can detect that. Okay? So because we have 2 choices, yes or no, 50% is better than 50% is greater than chance. So I have made your figure one that will go in your lab report right here. And if you fill out this table and don't mess with anything, this will complete this figure for you, right? Which is going to graph your forehead, left palm, and right hand with those percentages, 0, 25, 50, 75, or 100. So for forehead, where is your threshold? 15, where it crosses 50%, right? Okay. For left palm, where is your threshold? What happens there? It goes up and touches 50%, and then goes back to 25%, and then goes up. So what we're going to define, our operational definition of threshold, is going to be the last time that it crosses 50% and doesn't go back below. So this doesn't count. It would be this. So it'd be halfway between 25 and 30, so it'd be 27 and a half. Good? What about for the right hand? It would be this point, right? 42.5. Because it's the last time that it crosses 50%. So you come in, put those numbers in, and then you're done, right? So that would go here, right? 15, forget what I said, 27 and a half, 42, right? The last thing you need to do is put your data in your data sheet. And so you would put your subject initials, the year, and then this tells you what each abbreviation is, right? So we have adjustment forehead, adjustment left palm, adjustment right hand, right? Method of limits, method of constant stimuli, your false alarm rate for forehead, left palm, right hand. And then you're done. Have this in by midnight on Sunday. Good? Questions? All right, that's it. Sign up for times.